In this video, we're going to be installing this mirror on this Chevy Silverado. Let's get into it. Take this cover off first. Just use a trim tool. Just get behind it. Just pull. There is some clips holding it in. Underneath the handle, if you just take a pick, there's a little area where you can pop this cover off. Just get underneath there. Pop it out. That's just clipped in there and there. There's a cover right here. You can do the same, just pop it out. Get under there with a pick or a trim tool. You want to take the lock knob off, just use a pick. Just get underneath here. You want to just slide that out and it slides right up. Now take these screws out, use a 10mm socket. That one out there, and then there's two more underneath the handle. Take those out. Same 10mm socket. You might need a magnet. Pull those out. I'm going to take the switch off. You can leave it on and take the door panel off and just disconnect it from underneath, but it's a little bit easier to get to the connectors if you take it off now. Just use a trim tool, get underneath there, pop it up. Then in the front, slide it out, and you can disconnect the connectors, push down on the tab. And slide them all out. Now using a trim tool, we're going to pop the door pins out all along the perimeter of the door panel. There's just push pins holding it in. Just grab the door panel and slide it up. Right, now there's a thing over here. I'm going to get on that side. And then you want to pop this cable off. There is two little clips on the cable, and that slides right up like that. You can use some needle nose pliers to squeeze those clips and then pop it back. This one's actually broken. And then slide the door panel out and out of the way. Pull this vapor barrier back a little bit, just like that. And then this wire right here that you can see, you follow it up, it goes to where the mirror is. You just want to pull this wire out of there. And we'll disconnect this here. Just use a trim tool. Just pop these out. Just like that. Take this foam piece out. Now take these nuts off. Use a 10mm socket. When you get to the last one, just make sure you support the mirror. Just so it doesn't fall. You can grab the mirror and just slide it out. It might be, there is an area where it's clipped in that might hold you up a little bit. You just gotta pry it out. Just right there. And slide the wiring harness out. And there it is. Take the new mirror, slide the wiring harness in here. And it's a good idea to have the window down while you're doing this, and make sure you have one of the nuts with you. And slide that on. And get the nut started. Once it's all the way on, then you can let go of the mirror and you can put the other two nuts on. And put the other nuts on. Now we'll tighten these down. And just snug those down. And slide the wiring harness through the vapor barrier. And you can take the connector, plug it into the back of the switch. This wire right here can plug into here. On certain vehicles, your turn signals are going to work fine with just plugging this in, and then you can wire in the two other wires. You have the running lights and the spotlight as well. For this vehicle, that is not the case, so when you are not using the turn signals, the other lights are not going to work, so we can't wire it in that way. So we'll show you how to do it without having that as an option. We have these two sets of wires that are going to plug into these two connectors, the yellow and orange, and also the blue and brown, blue with a white stripe and brown wire. So what we want to do is start from the inside, and we're going to fish these through into the door panel. We're going to take this panel off here and this panel off here. Then we're going to push the wires through here, and we want them to go through this accordion boot that goes into the door panel, and then we can get them over to these connectors. So let's do that. Using a trim tool, just go underneath, just pop this up. I cannot come off of there. And just grab this piece. And you should be able to slide it towards the back of the vehicle. Takes a little bit of effort, but there's a clip right there. It's clipped in and down below. I just take a trim tool. I just want to pop these boots off right here. Just like that. You can pop the other one off on the door side as well. Now we're going to take the two ends of the wires that have the connectors on them. And we're going to fish these through here. I got one through, and I'm just trying to get the other one through. You can tape them together and make it a little easier. There we go, got those through. Now we need to feed these through this rubber accordion. If you need to, you can use a piece of brake line or something that makes it a little bit easier to fish it through. All right, that's good. I'll slide it through. Might have to twist it back and forth a little bit. There we go. There's the other wires. fish through there. And we want these to go through the main door. Pull back on the weather stripping and slide it through here. And there we go. Now I'm just going to cut the electrical tape off. You can always tape these together after. Right, and there we go. So you can tell the difference between these because this one has a black wire with a white line and a red wire with a white line, and then this one has a black wire with a couple of dots throughout and then a red wire with a couple dots throughout. So those are the two wires. Sometimes there may be different color wires, but just keep in mind what you're doing. So we're gonna hook the one with the stripes. I'm gonna connect that to the orange and yellow wire, just like that. And then the other one's going to go to the blue and white and brown wire. Connect that like that. So now the brown wire is going to go to the black wire with the dots, and then so forth. You can see the others match. So match those up and figure out which wire is going to be which for your vehicle. Before we put any of this back together, we want to make sure everything's wired correctly. So with this brown wire, that's the black one with the dots, that's over here. This one is going to be our ground wire. So we can just find a way to ground this. We're going to do that first because we can do that inside the cab. I'm going to pull the side panel off just underneath here. Just grab it, pull it out. This panel is going to come off. There's a screw right here. Just use a Phillips head screwdriver. Take that screw out. There's another one over here. Take that one out as well. This vehicle doesn't have it. Underneath this parking lever release handle, I'm going to use a 10mm socket. There's a 10mm bolt that's going straight up. Pull that bolt out. And you want to push the handle in and push it down. That'll release. Grab this panel and just pull it towards the back of the vehicle. Where we're going to add the ground is right there on that stud right here. You can see someone has put another ground wire right there. You could go there as well. It doesn't really matter. So we're just going to go on that one. So run the wire about the distance where you think it's going to go. Give yourself a little bit of extra just in case. We'll cut the wire right there. Then use some wire strippers. Just strip back the wire a little bit, about 1/4 inch. Then we're going to take one of these eyelets and put this in here. And you want to crimp this down using some wire crimpers. Give it a wiggle, make sure it's tight. It's good and tight. And we're going to fish this through. Go right on top of that stud. Just like that. And I have another nut. And I'll just put the nut over and I'll tighten that down. just like that. That looks good. Now we need to feed these 3 wires through the firewall because we need to get power to these, and we're not going to get the power from inside the vehicle. If you wanted to, you could wire in a switch and get your power from this fuse box right here. But we want these to come on with the turn signals, and that's how we're going to get that under the hood. And then we want this to come on with the reverse lights that's going to put the spotlight on, and then also for the marker lights on the outside. So we'll send these through the firewall. I'm going to pull this cover off right here. Slide that off. There's 2 little tabs on the side of here. Push those in, and this tips down. You can actually slide it out and out of the way. Just pull that down. Right there is where we need the wires to go through. We're going to take this bar off just so we can see some more. So use a 13mm socket. That off and out of the way. I'm going to pull the fuse box cover off. Just grab it, unlatch it, slide it out of the way. Now we need to go through this grommet down here. So we're going to use a tool like this. It has a very sharp end and it's hollow in the middle. So we'll stab this. You want to make sure you don't go near the wires, so stay away from the middle of it. We're going to go more to the edge, going downward. Again, just be careful, you don't want to get any wires. That's through the second layer. And that's all the way through. And now we can see where the wires, where that tool came through. We're going to fish these wires through the center. Fish them all the way out. And you can see the wires have come through. Pull those out a little bit. Once you have enough where you're comfortable that they're not going to fall back in, you can start pulling the tool out. Just work it back and forth. And slide it off, and you can pull the wires out. The first wire we're going to wire in is the spotlight, which we want to come on when the reverse lights come on. And just get enough slack with the wire. And then we're going to find the fuse that when the reverse lights come on, they come on. This vehicle has trailer lights as an option, so we're going to wire it into that circuit. For this vehicle, that is fuse number 10, so backup trailer lights. So we need to find fuse number 10. And that's located over here. So we're going to the third one down. It's a 10 amp fuse. Pull that fuse out. The way I'm going to wire this in is with one of these fuse jumpers that you can put the original fuse in here, and that's still going to work just like it did. And then there's an additional fuse that's going to feed for those spotlights on the mirror. So we can just plug this in here, and that's where our power source is. So we'll line this wire up. Have it come in from the side over here. Cut the wire here. Take the insulation off. Now remember, before you crimp this down, you do want to get the wire from the passenger side for this circuit because you want both of those spotlights coming on when you turn the reverse lights on. So just push those together. Oops. Twist those together. Slide that in place and then crimp this down. and just give it a wiggle, make sure it's nice and tight. Now we want the parking lights on, and that's going to be fuse number 26. So we find fuse number 26. 8, right there. Fuse 26 is right here. Pull that fuse out. And we're going to do the same with this fuse. Slide that in place. Push that down. And this is going to be for our white and red wire, or red with a white stripe on it. Line that where you want that to come into the fuse box. And we'll cut that there. Now for this circuit, there is a right side and a left side. It's up to you whether you want to get 2 of these jumpers and wire in the other mirror to the right side. It may not even make a difference. And we'll just cut the insulation off here. Wire this in here. And crimp it down. And give it a wiggle. Oops. And give it a wiggle. And that's tight. So that's good. Those circuits are wired. Now just push those wires out of the way. You can wire tie those so they're nice. And then take the cover and lock that down. Make sure the wires aren't getting pinched. And then we have to wire in the turn signals. So you're going to have, we're just going to show the driver's side, but you're going to have to do the same for the passenger side. Now we're going to take the push pins out for this cover. Just use a trim tool. Get in there, pop those out. And grab the panel, slide it off. Now take the bolts out on top. Use a 10mm socket. And lift up, slide this out. And then there's clips on the back side. I'm just going to use needle nose pliers. Squeeze the clips and just pull the grill out a little bit. Pop those out, the grill comes right off. Take these 2 screws out, use a 10mm socket. And use a 10mm socket, take this bolt out in the wheel well. Just pull back on the wheel well. You can access this bolt right here using a 10mm ratchet wrench. I'm going to loosen this bolt up right here. You don't have to take it out completely, you just got to loosen it. The headlight is slotted right there, so just Just loosen it a few threads. That should be good enough. I'll grab the headlight. I'll slide it forward. There we go. That's out. Pull that out. This is where we need to get to. These lights are where the turn signals are. One of these wires is just a marker light, and one of these wires is a turn signal light. So we can take this off. We're going to check those wires, figure out which one is which. Pop that off. For this vehicle, the turn signal is actually going to be on the blue wire. That's the power feed that's going to cause the turn signal to flash when you turn the turn signal on. If you go over to the connector and you were to disconnect the connector, you can see that for the left side, it is going to be the blue wire with a white stripe. Now, if you could access that wire from further back, you could tap into there. Sometimes it's not that easy to access this without taking the headlight out. So we'll connect this, push this back here. And find an area that's out of the way. I'm going to splice into the wire right here. We'll cut the wire, cut the insulation off both ends. Feed your wire through. Have a little bit of slack, but not too much. You can always loop it around a couple times if you need to. We'll cut this, take the insulation off here. I'm going to take some shrink wrap, slide it over the wire. Then we're going to take some butt connectors. These two we can just twist together on the one side. And these are shrink wrap butt connectors as well. They work really well. Crimp these down. Give it a wiggle. That's good. Do the same on the other side. And crimp this down. That's good. Now we're going to shrink that first, and then we'll put our shrink wrap over. The shrink wrap is just extra protection. That's good. And once that's cooled down a little bit, I'm just going to slide my shrink wrap over. And we'll heat that up as well. That looks pretty good. Now I'll put my bulb back in and line this up. Lock it in place. If you want to, you can put electrical tape over your repair or your splicing, but it should be fine. Now we'll just slide this back in. Place. Bottom lined up. And put the two top bolts in. Make sure this is pushed back all the way. And we'll snug these down. And tighten this bolt down. And snug it down. And push this in. Get the bolt in. And tighten it down. Snug. And then you want to take those wires and then find some areas where you can secure them down. Try to make them look as nice as possible. You can use some wire ties. Just go around. And even some electrical tape would work as well. And secure them. Now we're going to test them to make sure they completely work before we put everything back together. That's the reverse light. That works well. Now we're going to check the running lights, and those work properly. And then we're going to check the turn signals. Take the grill and line it up. All right, make sure it all clips in. And put the bolts in. Get those all started. Tighten those down. And put this cover on. Line it up. Take the push pins and get those all started. Lock them down. Put this bracket back in place, put the bolts in. Now I'll tighten these down. Now underneath here, you want to make sure the wires are out of the way of any moving components, like the parking brake right here. So we can tie this over here. Do the best you can to try to make it look neat. Then you can trim the excess. Put this back together. Line this junction box up. And lock it down. That's good. Everything's out of the way. Put the cover back on. Same with the ground wire. Just wire tie that out of the way. Now slide this panel in place, lock it down, take the parking release handle, slide that in place, slide it forward, take the bolt, tighten that down, put the screw in, tighten that down, and then there should be another one right there. Put that in. I'll slide this cover on. Lock it down. This piece is going to go right here. And just slide it in place. And clip it in place. Line this trim up. Lock it down. Now we need to reattach these boots. I'm just going to use a pick. You want to take this plastic piece off, separate it from the vehicle, just like that. And then you want to attach it to the boot. There may be a keyway on the boot, so you want to find that first. And there is right there. All right, that looks good all the way around. Then this will just clip in like that. Do the same on the other side. It just folds over just like that. Once it's in there, and lock it down. These are the wires that we ran through from the inside, and there's plenty of slack, so if we need to, we can run them a different way. What I want to do is have the wires wire tied to the other wires so that they don't get in the way of the window. To do that, I'm going to take the speaker out so I can actually access that area, and then it'll be a little bit easier to do it that way. So let's take that speaker out. Use a 7mm socket, take this screw out. Just grab the speaker, slide it out of the way. You can disconnect it if you want to, or just be careful and let it hang. I can run the wires in here. Go through here. Just taking the wire ties, wire tie it to this other wire. I'll just trim the excess. Put the speaker back. Put the screw in. snug it down. So the wires are going to come through here, and then you can put the vapor barrier up in place. Get that lined up the way it was. And you can connect the connectors. Make sure you connect the correct one to the correct connector because they are different. So we're doing the one with little dots. That's going to blue and brown. Oops, right here, blue and brown. And the other one is going to yellow and orange. Just like that. Now we're going to put the door panel on so we can disconnect all these connectors. That was just to test it. That's good. Now go ahead and put the door panel on. And for the wiring harness, make sure you push all those push pins in where they go, and do the same with the other ones. Take the foam piece and push that in. Just like that. And take the wiring harness and slide them through the door panel. You're going to come right there. Then we're going to hook this cable up. This cable's going to go right there. And lock down. And make sure the vapor barrier is pushed up against. If you need a little more butyl tape, you just retape it. Line the top part of the door panel up first, and make sure you get the push pins lined up. Those lined up, just push back on. Take the bolts, get those started. And tighten those down. Put this cover on. This trim piece. The top one, line it up. Lock it in place. Make sure the lock rod is all the way up. Then put the lock knob on. And with that right there, just push on that little button. Make sure it works. Now connect the connectors. The gray one's going to go here. This other black one's going to go right here. And then this brown one right here. And those wires right there. Push those back in, lock it down.